The Black Fat Femme Podcast is a production of iHeartRadio and DoctorJonPaul, LLC. Hello, everyone! Welcome to another episode of the Black Fat Femme Podcast, where all the intersections of identity are celebrated. I am one of your hosts, John, also known as DoctorJonPaul, and I just wanted to know, bitch, what was this past week? So much happened this past week, and I was just like, I gotta go to bed. Like, it just so much happened. I'm gonna get into it a little bit later, but I do want to shout out anyone and everyone who marched this weekend. Shout out to y'all for getting out there and doing what y'all had to do and what had to be done. But I also want to say LOL, not L as an LOL. I'm saying ELOL to Trump's sad ass parade. Because that nigga thought he was going to have himself a whole little like China stomp march, and that's in his head. That's what he thought he was going to have. Baby, that sad ass parumpa pum pum ass march that he had. The fuck was that? What was that?
I have so many thoughts.
When we are going to get into them, I promise.
It was just boo boo.
But Joho, it was giving boo boo. It was giving, the porta potties that aren't nice.
Yes.
It's there's nice porta potties.
The nasty ones that was tipped over, it spilled everywhere.
The plastic
stuff. Yes.
The plastic ones.
The blue
plastic,
the little shift cut out.
He thought he was going to have him one of those
Yep.
television show porta potties.
Yep.
No, girl. It's giving side of the road with a chain wrapped around it porta potty. It's tragic, honey. But anyway, Joho, how are you?
Good. Oh my God, good. I'm about to yawn, bitch. Oh my God, y'all, fam, girl. It's Jordan, aka Fat Girl Joho. Bitch, I am tired. It's been a week. Also, it's hot. Y'all, it's hot as fuck. Oh my God. Y'all don't understand, but like literally before we started recording, my eyeball was out here having a whole ass breakdown because like you get sweat in your eye, but you get like the sweat mixed with the sunscreen. Because that shit just like perpetually seems like, bitch, I cannot even like, girl, my eyeball is fucked up. I might have red eyes after this. It's nasty. Oh my God, it has been
fire. Eyes just burning, honey. Fire. Earth, wind, and fire, honey.
I'm screaming, but it's okay, y'all. I will be. I'll even if my eye pops out, it's gonna be okay, y'all. Because I'm truly beyond excited for this. You said no. We have no glass eyeballs on this show. My eyeball will pop up. I will be just fine. I'll just dab of sweat. But I'm beyond excited for conversation today, y'all, because we are joined by somebody that I respect so very much, whose work is so necessary for our fat liberation movement. This human is an activist, a curator of movement culture, event producer, and also a Bay Area born baddie. Today, she serves as the executive director of NAFA, or the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. Thank you.
Amen.
Please join us in welcoming our dear friend, Tigress Osborn. How are you, girl?
Hey,
my friend.
I'm so happy to be with y'all. I am not a Bay born baddie, but I am a Bay loyal baddie. I spent 22 years of my life in the Bay, and I used to.
You basically native.
Yeah.
Okay, me. Okay.
Well, and I love it like I'm a native, but I am back in my hometown, which is outside of the Phoenix. It's in the greater Phoenix area in Arizona. Yeah, that's where I'm coming to y'all from today.
Yes.
And I just want to go back to. I thought I heard a reference to Working Up a Black Sweat, and I've been obsessed with that song all week, and I don't know where it came into my head from, but I was just like, why don't more people talk about how brilliant this song is?
Yes. I
was working up a black sweat out at the march in my little hometown yesterday. I was really excited because, growing up in what was then sort of rural Arizona and is now kind of suburban sprawl Arizona. I never could have imagined this many people turning out for solidarity with immigrants, to talk for, solidarity against white supremacy, solidarity against fascism. Like, I was going to drive into Phoenix and I was like, let me just see what's happening down here. And I went downtown expecting it to be like 30 to 50 people. I'm gonna I'm hang out with these old hippies and young radicals, and it's gonna be a handful of us, and the streets were packed. We had more
Wow.
people than some of them scenes from the military parade, you know,
T.
Oh,
T.
some of the, and
her.
we didn't
Yeah.
have any squeaky tanks making
Mm-hmm.
strange noises. So, but yeah, we
Screaming.
yeah. So so that was my black sweat of the weekend, was getting on out
Mm.
there for that.
I love it. I love it. I had a chance yesterday. So people know I live in the Inland Empire, and I've been very vocal about the idea of how the Inland Empire, oftentimes we miss a lot of the bigger stuff because everything's happening in LA or everything's happening in like major cities like San Francisco, et cetera, et cetera. And I was so surprised. One of the cities I was driving through yesterday, when I was coming back, so I didn't get a chance to march and do everything. So I had a book talk yesterday, and I was at the book talk, and as I was driving home from the book talk, I was just surprised. I was literally getting ready to get back on the freeway to go home, and as I was getting ready to leave and come home, there was just mounds and mounds and mounds and mounds of people that were out there, and I just was like, this is what we need. And so now, I'm seeing a lot of conversations around, because even my husband is saying, like, he was driving home yesterday from work, and he was like, oh my God, there were so many people out there. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, right. And he was like, if all these people are protesting, then how did this man win? And I go, I'm not. I try not to be what do you call those people who speculate?
Like a political scientist, whatever. Like
No. What do you call them? The people
commentators.
No, there's another word for it. People who always put their tinfoil hats on.
Oh,
conspiracy
theorists.
Conspiracy theorists. I try not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I genuinely believe that something about this election ain't right, and it's not sitting with me well.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely, like, I know that there's a lot of terrible people out there, but I'm looking around and I'm going, if this many people are marching the streets, and I also think a lot of it is people didn't think that this stuff was going to come to their front door, and
That's
so maybe they've
definitely.
had a change of heart. But I also believe, like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I would love, I'm just going to say it this way, I would love for someone to investigate what happened, because again,
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there are investigations happening, and there are
yeah,
lawsuits happening, and there's
Oop.
there's all this stuff looking at the election, and the problem is we have to deal with the situation in office now, even if
Mm-hmm.
even if it came by
right,
that office in a
right.
faulty way. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're
This
dealing
is
with
what we
now.
got. This
and
is what we
and
got.
I feel cautiously optimistic about seeing some, because some of the folks who were out there with signs and cheering and whatever, then they just went on back to their lives right after that, and they're not thinking about it today. They're not going, they're going to show up for the performative part, but they're not going to do the other parts, right? But some of them are not. Like, some of them are, this is going to galvanize some people, this is going to radicalize some people, and it's going
Yep.
to, and even if they're baby steps, they're steps that they weren't taking. When I think
Right.
about, like, yet nobody's downtown in my hometown today, right? And nobody
Mm-hmm.
was downtown in my hometown on Friday. But
Friday. Yeah.
where did they carry that into their churches this morning? Where did they carry that into their Father's Day
Great
celebrations
point.
today? Where did
Great
they carry
point.
that into their week and their work week? And what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went to the
Speak on it, girl.
Tuesday, the whatever. And and so, like, really thinking about, because I have some skepticism sometimes, and especially especially when the white folks show up for the protest. Sometimes they show up like the Who's in Whoville, like, we're just going to make a circle and sing, and
Yeah.
and
The
that,
ones, yeah, bothering people. Yes, yes.
like this, we're just going to make a circle and sing, and
Yeah.
then and I like the singing circle. I like the energy of that.
It's necessary
But what
at
are we
moments.
gonna, but that, right? But what are we gonna do? After we
Mhm.
make our Who circle
When the
and.
Grinch goes inside the house and y'all are done being mad at the Grinch, what are we gonna do
Hmm.
afterwards, right? Yeah, and
Hmm.
that's literally, you talk about Whoville. I
Well,
love it. Yeah.
and also, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do with the system that isolated the Grinch in the first place and traumatized
T.
him into being who he was?
Okay.
The
How we gonna
mayor.
bring
Okay.
back? How we gonna
Okay.
bring back the Grinch and create actual healing, actual change? You
Can we
know.
talk
Okay.
about that? Because I always be wanting to cuss out the mayor every time I see him and be like, you are the reason why everybody hates the Grinch. Because you out
Stop.
here instigating shit. You and your wife out here instigating shit. That's why.
Hmm.
But you're right. You're right. There is a system that's present. And I think a lot of folks, it's very performative, but I also agree with you, and I think that's something I need to think about yesterday. I think about the people, who are watching it, play out in front of their, like for instance, I mean, I'll say this, and I know we have to move on, but I was watching something earlier today when everyone knows I start my day off watching reels, and so I was watching a reel this morning, and ABC was reporting about how I guess there was a swap meet that happened yesterday, and they did a raid at the swap meet, and people were saying, I never thought that it would get here. Like we saw it happening in downtown LA, we saw it happening in Whittier, we saw it happening in Bellflower, but we never thought it was actually going to happen here. And I think that that's the thing that people are starting to recognize. It's like, yeah, you thought, you used to think of it as, oh, it's just something I'm seeing on social media. But now, girl, this stuff is actually happening in your neighborhood and you have to respond to it. And now it's a different game for people. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we ask this question like, well, why didn't you know before? Some of us knew before, some of us knew before, right? Mm-hmm. Why weren't you listening to the people who knew before? Why weren't you listening to the people who told you it could go like this and it would go like this? And those are fair questions. And also, how do we kind of like check folks with that, kind of told you so, and then get past that told you so into the like, okay, but you're here now. Do you actually want to roll up your sleeves and do some work?
Right.
Do you actually want to try to do something? Because if like Ijoma Olo wrote this piece around, it's actually about Palestine and folks who are, supporting a free Palestine, and who've been supporting a free Palestine for many, many years, and that frustration that they sometimes often have of like the folks who were more latecomers to this. And I'm like, full disclosure, I was a bit of a latecomer to this, right? I understood some of the politics, not all of the politics. But Ijoma wrote this really beautiful piece about like what we do need. I think she called it a welcome committee. Like, it's not the work of everybody who's already been in the movement to orient new people, but it is the work of somebody to orient the new people, because we want new people. And it's the same parallel. I think about this all the time in the work that we do in fat liberation at NAFA specifically, and the other kind of fat liberation work that I do or that my colleagues at NAFA do out within our organization and outside of our organization. That sort of like you can't expect folks to show up already as fully baked fat activists or even as fully baked social justice understanders.
We all have to start somewhere.
You all had to start somewhere. You have to have some 101 for people, and you have to not let that 101 be anywhere in the range of annoying to abusive for people who already get it. Right. You have to have spaces where people who already get it don't have to be dragged through 101 over and over and over again, but you still also have to have the 101 spaces. And for me, this rally downtown, it's like the pre-101, right? Now who's going to come to the 101, and then who's going to go to the 201, and then who's going to work on the actual projects in the streets, right? And I think there's parallels for across movements for this stuff, and we have to work in solidarity across movements on all of this stuff.
That's so real. That's so real. And I think we all need to hear that right now. I wasn't going to take too much time today in this episode. I mean, but obviously, right, when you're talking about liberation work, I always like to say all oppression is connected. And, we're going to be talking a lot about fat liberation in this conversation. Obviously, we wouldn't have brought you on if, to just to have you on. Like, we want to make sure that we're centralizing a lot of what you're talking about. But I think this is really good to talk about folks who are listening to this show and are thinking to themselves, I want to do more. I don't know how to do more. I'm scared to do more. Where do I start? And I think that this is a great kind of segue into that. And I think as we get into our next category in a couple of minutes, it'll be really good for folks to kind of hear that, because I think I get this a lot, even yesterday when I was talking to, some babies, there was a group of kids who came to hear me speak yesterday at the Anaheim Library. And their number one concern was, they said, I'm queer and, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm doing all of these things. How do I get confident, but how do I find ways to start doing more to make sure that I change the way things are working around me as a kid? And so we were having conversations about that. And so that introductory thing is real for people. People are scared that they're going to say or do the wrong thing when they start. And that's basically what I told them. You just have to start. You have to put the content out. You have to show up to the march. You have to start doing something. Like even this podcast, right? Who would have known we would have the success of this podcast if I never pitched it, right? So I think that's the thing we have to remind ourselves is that we have to start somewhere. So,
And you are going to say or do the wrong thing. You are. Like if you're trying
yeah.
to do social justice work, you are a human, and at some point you're going to step on somebody's toes or roll over
Yep.
somebody's toes or
Yep.
whatever, and you have to
Roll. I love
if
it.
you're well, because I'm a part-time rollator user, so sometimes I'll be out there
Mhm.
rolling, and
Yeah.
and I'm going to roll over somebody's toes, sometimes I'm going to bump into somebody from the back. Me and my rollator trying to go through Fan Fusion, which is our Phoenix version of Comic-Con. I
Yeah.
did three costumes last week for Fan Fusion because this is part of my creative expression, and I dress up my rollator as well so that I can use my mobility device, but I just bring it on into the costume, right? But I'm gonna bump people with it sometime. It's crowded, it's
Real.
whatever, and it's like it's like a parallel to what's gonna actually happen to you anytime you go out in the world and engage with folks. You're gonna bump people sometimes, and then the question is like, do you take responsibility for how you bump people? Do you make people think about how maybe that it was their fault they got bumped? Because that's
Yeah.
certainly true when you're a mobility device user, but it's also sometimes true in other settings, right?
Mhm.
And like, but do you take a responsibility when when it really was your fault? And like, what do you do for repair if you actually hurt somebody? If
Amen.
I roll over somebody's foot with my rollator and they are injured, it doesn't matter to them in their injury whether I didn't mean to do it, right? And it's not the time to talk about like, well, maybe if you were being more, if this space was more accessible, I wouldn't have rolled over
Yeah.
your foot. Or if you'd been more
Right.
careful, like right now it's just the time to make sure, is your toe broken? Let's take care of that, right? And
Right.
it's the same thing with activism. Like you're going to make mistakes and you have to take care of yourself and you have to take care of the people that you've harmed. And you have to give yourself a little bit of grace for when your intention was not to harm anybody. And you also have to understand the difference between impact and intention. You may have still had impact even if you didn't intend to hurt somebody.
Amen.
And this is
That's
just
real.
like, you're going to fumble around, and it's better to be fumbling around in the interest of like, if you're
That's it.
committed to community and you're committed to empowering other folks and supporting other folks and solidarity and all those values that I know I share with y'all at the podcast and y'all in your other work. If you're committed to those things, then when you make mistakes, you will address the mistakes, and you will still be part of community. We will still be part of, I mean, I think we have a lot to learn also from what was really helpful to me on this is Adrienne Marie Brown's "We Do Not Cancel Us," about like stepping back to be reflective about like when there is growth for when people make mistakes, when there is room for accountability, but also repair and restoration and all that stuff. And like, you don't have to be kicked out the family because you made a mistake.
Right.
And if you made that kind of mistake, then you still have to figure out, well, what do I do instead so I can be
Restorative
part of
justice.
what do I do instead? And where else can I be part of the family to contribute in a different direction? Because you don't get to just stop doing the work of trying to make the world better because you're licking your wounds forever. Right? But you will make mistakes. And I think that's really important for people who are young chronologically, but also people who are young to particular kinds of movements. Right?
Yeah.
Is if you don't accept that you're gonna fuck up sometime.
Yep.
And you'll live. You'll live, and we'll get you through it, or we'll get you through it, or you'll find another place to get through it and do the work to get through it, right?
Amen. So real. So I'm happy that you're here because I think this is going to be a very robust, and I say that with all the things around of fat, joyful, happiness, flowers, you want to name it. This is going to be a very, very good convo. And so as we start our show, I mean, we've already kind of gotten into what the crux of the show is going to be, but I want to say this week, one of the things that I would love to do, as we always do, is we like to give our flowers to Miss Tisha Campbell in our Still Here segment. One of the things about having another fat liberalist, what is that?
Liberationist.
It's Sunday and I'm tired. A fat liberationalist with us is is thinking about our humble beginnings. And like you said, you talk a lot about that, right? Like, where did we start? What are we doing, right? And so I wanted to ask y'all, what is one of the things that, thinking about policy and thinking about where we're at in this fat liberation kind of movement, thinking about policy and law, what is something that you'd like to change that may impact our fatness? And I was going to go back to your point about airplanes. I know you had made a point about that. I don't know if it was on the air or if it was in the pre-show, but I know you had noted about, you were talking about your fat books and your fat shirt and all of that. I would make it a law that airlines have to require, regardless of your size, that if a person needs a second seat, that they don't have to pay for it.
Well, That is a law in part of Canada, but in the
Oh,
US, that is not the law.
I would make it a law here, goddammit. And then also too, roller coasters, because I'm a roller coaster girly. I love thrills, but I know a lot of roller coasters don't love me. And a lot of times you can't get on the roller coaster, or you can't get on a ride, quote unquote, here in America because there's no side. Some rides have them. Like I know that some rides will say, oh, if you go to the back, there's a seat back there that actually has space for you to close or for you to be able to sit. But I would also make that a law too, that say if you have anything anywhere, whether it be a chair, whether it be a roller coaster, whether it be a plane, whatever, if a fat person has to sit, it has to be size inclusive to some degree. And that would be something that would be my thing. I would, what do you call that? When
The
you're a
hill you die on.
politician,
The hill you
no,
die
when you're a
on.
politician and you're
Your
campaigning,
platform.
I would campaign on that
Your
platform.
platform.
Yeah, that would be my platform. What about you, Tigress?
Well, so can I share with your listeners a little bit about the laws that do exist? Because I
Go
think a
ahead.
lot of
Yeah.
your listeners might not know.
Yeah.
It's really rare anywhere in the world, actually, for there to be laws that explicitly address body size. And part of our work at NAFA, the organization that I run, is the Campaign for Size Freedom, which works on trying to change laws around the United States. There are only a handful of places in the US where there's anything related to size discrimination in the law. Sometimes it's in the civil rights law, sometimes it's in laws based on appearance-based discrimination. So sometimes it's made very explicit, this is about height and weight. Other times it'll just say, you can't discriminate based on appearance. And then in the sort of legal definitions behind the scenes, it'll mention height and weight. But there are 9 cities, and we're on 9 cities now, I think, and 2 states that have any kind of law. There's no federal law protecting against size discrimination. So when it comes to the specifics of airplanes and roller coasters, airplanes are governed by the Federal Aviation Administration. So state and local laws do not affect what airlines are required to provide for you. Airlines, it's up to them and the policies. Right now, it's up to them and the policies that they have. There's nothing in FAA guidelines specifically about size.
Of course.
There's some other things about accessibility that you can kind of, get them to do stuff, but sometimes, some airlines have policies that are specifically for customers of size. Right now, Southwest Airlines has the best policy in the industry, but they are making changes to their policies every day, and they've already made some changes to their policy to make it a little bit more limited than it was a couple of months ago. You can find all this information on the NAFA website, because I don't want to go too much into the nuts and bolts of it right now, but on our Southwest page on our website, you can see if you want the details. But the short version is Southwest is the best airline to purchase a second seat and get a reimbursement with a procedure that makes it easier than it is on most airlines. Alaska,
they make it hard.
They make it hard. They make it very hard. And if you're flying on other airlines, you always have to book your ticket, with a customer service agent if you need a second seat. Whereas on Southwest, it's easy to do on their website. There's a bunch of stuff, but we just don't know how it's going to continue to change at Southwest. So your listeners who are interested in this, we have a petition to Southwest on our website. We've been trying to get them to meet with us and talk more about their policies. But so anyway, so for airlines, the FAA does that. For roller coasters, there is usually stuff there's stuff in federal and state safety laws about the safety of amusement parks. And in places that have laws that you can't discriminate based on size, those laws almost always have a clause that says, unless it's based on federal safety standards. So it's really hard to get amusement parks to say, we have to make things that are size accessible, because they can just say it's not safe, and then the law doesn't really bind them. But the question is, when do we start to get creative about wanting to include everyone in our communities? Because these amusement parks, especially a new amusement park that's being built, or a new ride that's going in at an amusement park, y'all know fat people exist.
Right.
And it's not impossible for every fat person to be able to be in an amusement park ride. There are other rides that we can, there are some rides that even very large fat people can do. It just depends on the amusement park and the ride. And there's great travel influencers and other folks who do accessibility stuff around amusement parks.
I see, on TikTok, on the Clock app.
Yeah, but the underlying question is the same underlying question it is for everything. y'all know we exist, so why don't you make stuff for us? Why do we have to come in after the fact and be like, you didn't have these clothes, you didn't have these chairs, you didn't have this blood pressure cuff, you didn't have this roller coaster seat, you didn't have this airline seat, you didn't have this seat on the public bus, you don't have these seat belts, you don't have the, like, all of that stuff is stuff that is being made right now with the full knowledge that fat people exist, but without consideration for fat people. So how do we change more people's hearts and minds so that instead of them saying, well, you shouldn't be so fucking fat and then you wouldn't have this problem, that what they are saying is, there are fat people in my community and I want them to be able to participate. So what do I need to do to make the spaces accessible? And it shouldn't require, this is just like everything else about accessibility and inclusion. It should not require an act of the government to tell you that you want to have a chair in your restaurant that a larger person in your community can sit there. That you want to have a pew in your church where that's wide enough for somebody to be able to get into it. That you want to sell caskets that are big enough for big people without charging them thousands more dollars. You should not take a federal law to make you do that. It should take you being interested in your fellow humans who are big, whether you think we should be or not, and wanting us to be with you more than you want to judge us based on our size. Wanting us to be included more than you want to lecture us about our health or your perceptions of our health. You know, like, where do we get... So I love the question about how I would change the law. I would change the law with a federal change to to the Title IX Civil Rights Act laws that just add body size to those laws. That's how I would change the law. But we all know, like, the Civil Rights Act already bans discrimination in all kinds of other ways, and we still see people face discrimination in all those ways, right? So the law is only one tool. We always say, legislation is not liberation. Legislation can be harm reduction, it can be systems change, but we do have to be dreaming about something bigger than just, can we get some more of these laws on the books? So
that is the title of this episode. Dream of something bigger, bitch.
Dream of something bigger.
Dream big, bitch. You got to dream bigger, bitch. Yes.
Because no matter what you think about, what's gonna, you're not gonna be fat, these people shouldn't be fat, like, whatever your thoughts are on that, there have always been fat people, there are always going to be fat people, unless y'all try to eugenics us off the planet. There are going to be fat people, and some of you who think you're never going to be fat are going to turn out fat because of something that changes in your life. That you can't anticipate.
Was it Crutches and Spice who said that? Like, you're one, you're literally one thing away in your life from your body changing or your body turning its back on you. And I will say that now for me, I'm learning that more and more in my own lived experience, especially now I'm dealing with a lot of hip and joint pain as I'm getting older, and I'm still able to do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. I can climb stairs, I can do things, but I think about that a lot, that as I'm starting to age, I turn 40 next month. My body is definitely reminding me daily that I'm no longer in my 20s and I'm no longer in my early 30s. And so, but I wanted Joho to jump in. Joho, is there anything that you wanted to change or that you would like to?
Well, I know I went in the civics lesson, and then we didn't get to hear your answer of, like, what's
it's all good.
Girl, you went and do a whole civil rights lesson. I was here
and
for
you
it.
taught me something I actually didn't even know. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
I mean, I really love what you're saying so much, Tigress, because I think one thing I think, and actually in so many movement conversations, we actually are just like talking about, like, we're actually having the wrong conversation, because we're we are talking we're discussing solving for theoreticals, this, like, if people weren't fat, blah, 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 but we're not actually discussing reality of, like, that is actually what exists today. Like, tragically, we already exist. So, like, whether you want to debate whether we should exist or not, we already do. And so, like, we're having the wrong conversation now, because that's also why this movement work will actually be kind of futile, or the anti-work will be futile, because, like, you're having conversations about things that are already happening right now or existing. And so I really, 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 like, appreciate naming that. And I think so much about, I want like I just want things to be made inherently in mind with fat folks. Like I think a lot about like when I went to Universal Studios, and like and like it's a play of every fat person of like which theme park is the one for us, right? Is it Disneyland, Disney World, Universal Studios, or XYZ, right? And I
Right, right.
and I distinctly remember when they made the new the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, or even Nintendo World. I'm like, y'all built this in the Lord of my in the year my Lord and Savior's Beyonce's 2019, 2015, 2020. Like you have built this knowing that fat people exist, and you still decided to build something like that was fat exclusive. And I think a lot about Bridget Tovar in her TED Talk years ago about like the way the world works is that it is trying to limit a fat person's participation in public life, is limiting our access to publicly participating in life. And I think about that so much. And so I think one thing I want to shift is just how things are made. Like even when I went to when I went, like, for example, I love going to the theater. I love seeing a musical. I love seeing a play. These theaters are inherently built to be for thin people. And let's be honest. You think the minus sizes, because my friend says minus size is the people minus size. You think the minus size people also enjoy these tight seats and these like in the small arrangements? Like I get that you're built for like maximum capacity and maximum money, and like that's rough, right? The systemic issue here is that you feel like you don't have enough money to do XYZ. But like you also need to solve the systems issue that you're then perpetuating, is that people actually can't enjoy something and be comfortable. Like we all deserve comfort. We all deserve access to fun experiences and joy. And so one thing like I might try and to do legislation is that like actually you actually have to build things with all bodies in mind. And I also think our government should also be designed to offset costs. And don't tell me that we got no budget, because y'all be raising that debt ceiling every damn day for shits and giggles. Then y'all be definitely spending money constantly on our military forces. So we can absolutely actually subset the cost that would take for businesses, restaurants, theaters, planes to build things that actually feel more spacious to every single person, and that our bodies can fit in.
But also, we absolutely can, right? There is enough money in this country to take care of the needs of fat people, disabled people, queer people, black and brown people, all the people who are excluded, and the excuse is it's too expensive to stop excluding them. That's a bullshit excuse. There's enough money, it's just how we prioritize the money, right? But part of how we prioritize the money is by who we deem as worthy in the culture. And we don't we have stigmatized fat into a place of, you if you want to be treated fairly, then you should lose weight. And there are a variety of socio-cultural, political, and economic reasons why we maintain those attitudes. And, again, for people who are new to this, there's some really great, scholarship by a variety of, especially Black scholars, writing about the ways that our ideas about fat bodies, the ways that our construction of anti-fatness is rooted in white supremacy and colonialism, and and is rooted in these ideas of what an ideal body is, and what ideal behavior around food and enjoyment of food and all that stuff is, and who that means is ideal. Right. And that affects everything from military policy to hospital policy to education policy. Like, it affects every system that governs our lives. This idea that the ideal body is a thin white body. And and shout out to Dr. Sabrina Strings and Deshawn Harrison and Jessica Wilson and Joy Cox and all these folks who are writing about the intersections of anti-fatness and anti-blackness.
Right.
And I always hate to like name names, because there will always be people that I forget, but like those are a few of the folks you can look at if you want to learn more about this.
Right.
But all of that stuff this is the thing about, like, like, we're all in this together. One of the things I would most like to see that is not a legal change, but is a change to how we do social justice activism, is I would like to see more people across other movements talking about the needs of fat people and the inclusion of fat people. And we have not done that perfectly. Fat liberation as an organized movement has historically been a very white heteronormative movement in the ways that it's been formally organized. And there are individual activists, there are group leaders, there are people like the Fat Underground that, you know, had more queer sensibility or more intersectional politics, even if we weren't calling it that, than NAFA. The group that I run was historically a white heteronormative organization. We started talking about intersectionality when I started talking about intersectionality. And I don't mean that as a like patting myself on the back, but I do mean that like that's the era in which it came into the dialogue as an organization. But today, when I think about people who are truly fat liberationists, not people who are plus size influencers, that is not the same thing as fat liberationists.
Now, clock that T.
Wake that shit up, girl. Wake that
up.
Not the same thing. Some people who are plus size influencers are doing that from a basis in fat liberation. And some people are not. And they're not the same thing. And when I think about like people who are truly trying to live an actual fat lib politic, that politic is based in ideas of intersectionality and solidarity, even if we even from folks who weren't using that particular terminology at the time. And so if that's what you're really trying to do, then you are doing the work of talking about other social justice issues. Maybe not every single social justice issue, but you're thinking about how our movements, the Venn diagram of our movements and the things that we need to do to support each other, right? If you're truly a fat liberationist. A lot of people use that word who I don't, that terminology who I don't consider to be truly fat liberationists. But also a lot of people use the word liberation to talk about other movements, and they will have a meeting in a place where fat people literally cannot be. Physically cannot be there, right? Or you know, or they will you know, they will talk about improvements to access of healthcare, and they'll talk about the obesity epidemic instead of talking about anti-fatness in healthcare. Right? And so like there's all of these places.
You said get specific, bitch. Get specific.
I mean, there's all these, so there are these places where or they'll make the list of like all the people who need support, and they'll leave fat people off the list, or they're scared to even use the word fat. I mean, it's controversial to use the word fat. We use it because we believe that you cannot destigmatize something that you won't even say.
Right? Because then you're still having the stigma. That's the thing about all the time. Like our discomfort with the word is gonna continue with more of our downfall. Like if we have discomfort with the word, like we're never gonna actually have progress for anything. You can't say
black.
the thing, girl. Like
say it.
I feel like that,
and it
is
to your point, Tigress. Sorry. Also speaks to your point about like people are afraid to fuck up, and you made a point earlier, like you have to fumble. You have to fumble. I think about that all the time. Like in the work that I've done in my community, and especially my last job, there's such because I work with folks who are mainly white. There's so much refusal to engage, like because they're like, what if we fuck up? And I was like, bitch, fuck up. Like if you fuck up and you say, hey girl, I might fuck up when I say this, you will more likely be forgiven, and they will more likely be they'll say, you know what, I can work with that. I can work with it. If you just fuck up and don't say shit, girl,
right?
You like
or act like you know it all and then
bad.
fuck up.
Yeah,
act like you know it all and then fuck up. Yes.
Sometimes you will fuck up and you won't be forgiven, but that doesn't mean you get to abandon your post of doing the work, right? And when it comes to the word fat, sometimes you will, especially if you are not fat yourself, and you'll say the word fat and somebody will correct you. Oh no, don't say that. That's mean. Don't say that. Right? There's a lot of complication around the word fat, and it's a trauma word for many people. Fat people, formerly fat people who are terrified of becoming fat, all of us. It's a trauma word. So I want to always acknowledge that it is difficult for some people to hear. But it feels really like one thing I know is that people who use fat in a politicized way are people who actually want to make a better world for fat people, not people who want to make the world easier for fat people to lose weight. I trust people who use the word fat in that politicized way to have my best interest in heart. And I believe that there are activists in other movements who want to have more of that dialogue. We need to be doing more and I'm including myself in this, right? And I'm including my organization in this. We need to be doing more cross-movement work, more cross-movement training. We did some really great partnership work last year with Little People of America. because we're working on these bills and they're about size discrimination. That's height and weight, right? And I learned so much, and now I'm following all these, all these like activists and influencers who are little people. I'm learning more about the history of little people in the world. I'm learning more about the things that little people face in, in today's culture. And they got to learn more about, like, fat people and the things that we have in common around, like, the medical establishment trying to change our bodies to tell us that's the only way we can have free lives is if we change our bodies,
Yeah.
and the pressures on them to, the weight loss pressures on them, the way that the obesity industrial complex, which has been, created to sell us stuff about losing weight, goes after them, medicalizes fatness in them, right?
Okay. Wait, to Tigress, sorry. You're saying so much good stuff, and I love it. And no name. We do have to get to our first break, or else we'll be off the air. And what you're saying, I want you to hold it. I want you to hold it, girl. I want you to hold it.
Because you're getting into our second segment.
Okay.
You're getting into our next segment. So yeah.
You're doing the damn thing. So y'all, fam listeners, now that we the fats are out here fighting for freedom in these streets and got y'all think to freedom. We're gonna give you a moment to think. We'll take a quick fat break. More in just a sec.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we are Black fam. We Black, fat, and fam. And to dive into today's conversation, Tigress. So, like, I had a question that I was gonna kick us off with, but really, I feel like you, you dived already so much into it already. I think I'm maybe curious to hear about, like, maybe like your own journey into this work, your own journey into the org, into the org of NAFA.
Mm-hmm. Well, I first learned about NAFA when I was 18 years old. I went away to college in 1992, and on my 18th birthday, my school was having a diversity, like a day conference. It was called Otelia Cromwell Day, and there was a woman at my school, Carrie Hemingway, who had been very, very active in the Boston chapter of NAFA. And she worked in the career development office at my school, and she hosted a workshop as part of this diversity day about fat people. And she talked about NAFA. And I had an identity as a fat girl. If you see pictures of me as a teenager, especially if you just see me by myself, if you see me in context with my peers, you can see I'm a little whiter, I'm a little curvier, I'm a little more developed, but you probably wouldn't be like, look at that fat lady, right?
Right.
Because it was just in context, I felt super fat all the time compared to my classmates, compared to what the teenage girl magazines were showing me, compared to Oprah and her ups and downs that I was watching when I came home from school every day. Like, there were all these things that made me, and in looking at my family and what my body was going to look like when I got older and whatever, there were all these things that, like, I was being told all the time that I was too fat. My actual weight was higher than it was quote unquote supposed to be. So I had a really strong identity as a fat girl, and I felt a little bit rebellious about that. And so I went to this workshop and learned about NAFA. Now, I did not join NAFA until many, many years later, but just knowing that NAFA was out there, because I had, like, seen fat activists on, folks of my vintage and older will remember Donahue, which was like the talk, Donahue,
age.
yes, king of the talk shows in the, in the mid 80s. And I remember seeing a few times fat people on there, and then later on shows like Ricky Lake, like, oh, are you too fat to wear that outfit, or just because they make it in your size doesn't mean you should wear it, or whatever, like those like trashier talk show kind of topics. But so I saw fat people sometimes in media and stuff. And I saw fat people in my family, and on one side of my family, like, for me, I had a very racialized understanding of who could be confident as fat people and who could not be, because my fat Black aunts, even if they were still talking about dieting, even if they were still talking about how they should lose weight, they were also fly as hell. Right. They were gonna put on this dress and I'm gonna be sexy, and somebody's, and it was, Black men talking about these Black women in my family, where I heard expressions like, don't nobody want a bone but a dog, and like things that affirmed that there were people who were attracted to bigger women. I heard that in the Black community that I grew up in, the Black neighborhood I grew up in. I heard that in that side of my family. I'm a mixed race Black woman, and on the other side of my family, on the white side of my family, I mostly just heard people talk bad about being fat. So I developed a really racialized understanding, and I think that kind of lived experience sometimes gets misinterpreted when other people hear you talk about it
Right.
to, oh, well, Black people don't have fat phobia. That's not what I said. That is not
No.
what I said. Right. But there are some cultural differences, and especially in my generation there was still some cultural protection. I think like
Right.
music videos and things like that shifted some of that body stuff, but that was like me as a young person looking at the world and seeing like it's even my fat, confident, beautiful, glamorous aunts were still always talking about weight loss. So there was a constant weight loss
Mm.
message, you know. And Oprah was one of my biggest role models, and she was the, you know, the icon of weight and weight loss in so many complicated ways. And a bigger conversation than we have for today probably, but like all of that is who I was as a teenager. And then I encountered the idea that this entire organization existed, and the whole point of the organization was just to say, let fat people be and let us
Yeah.
live. Let us live, right?
Yeah.
And I carried that with me, you know, for years. When my first sort of foray into publicly talking about fatness was like I had a little um Geocities website, little free Yahoo website in the
Yes.
90s
Yes. See me. Yes.
that was called Big Girl Pride, and I used to make my own little art, even though I'm a terrible artist, and write little blogs basically. And it had, you know, I don't know, 20 followers or something, but it was my first sort of foray into public life. And then in 2008, I founded a nightclub event in Oakland called Full Figure Entertainment, and we used to host these Full Figure Friday parties. And it was a hip hop. I mean, it was a hip hop party. I started with parties in San Francisco, but I lived in Oakland. We moved a party to Oakland, and I ran this party for like 9 years in the Bay Area. That was, you know, we used to say for full-bodied ladies and their friends and fans of all sizes.
I know
And
that's right.
Come on, friends events.
yeah, and it was, you know, it wasn't political except for the fact that it is political anytime fat people do something in defiance
Right.
of people telling us
Right.
we're supposed to stay home and wait until we lose weight to do stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was
Uh-huh.
political in that way, but I had a mission and value statement because I'm a nerd, and I think I was probably the only nightclub promoter in the country that had a mission and value statement. Certainly in the plus size nightclub world,
Period.
Yeah.
and you know, and it said things like, you know, we want to support fat activism during the, like, what are we going to do? We're going to try to throw the hottest party in the Bay on Friday night for fat people. That's what we're going to try to do. And on the, what do
Mm.
we do with the rest of our week? Right? Today people would talk about it as like, how do I use my platform in other ways, right? And for me, it was just sort of like, I want to throw this really hot party. I want this party to be competitive with the, you know, with the, what did you say, minus size people with their parties.
Not minus size people.
I love that terminology.
So
It's great. It really is great.
Shout out to listener Kelsey Daniels, my play cousin, because she said
Oh,
yesterday.
Kelsey said that. Of course, Kelsey's brilliant. Everybody should know
Minus-sized
Kelsey's
people.
brilliant spoken word art, and
Yeah.
Kelsey's brilliant and just always fly. And minus size people, I love that because, you know, the idea of just considering people who are not plus the norm, and then plus is the additional thing, right?
Right.
Is, you know, it's, yeah, I love minus size people. So anyway, I wanted my parties to be competitive with the minus size people, and the minus size people are welcome at this party as
Come
long
on
as
down. Come on down. Yeah, girl.
yeah, come on down and
Yeah.
spend your money supporting this Black owned, fat owned business, and also come into this space knowing that what is centered here is fat women of color. Everybody else is welcome. What's centered here is fat women of color, and women of color in particular, because I started going to some of the other plus size parties, or they were called BBW parties, big beautiful women parties.
Yes.
And I was
My mama
often,
would go to those.
yeah, and I was off. Did she go to Butterfly Lounge? Y'all are in Southern
I
California.
don't
bet.
know, but I do. Edwina, I do remember a time
Come
where
on,
my mom
Edwina.
would, oh, I'm going out with the fat girls, and
Yep.
I think word on the curb, and if I get in trouble for this, you know,
I was like, we're gonna get this. She was like, don't my
I'm
business.
still
I'm like,
snitching on your mom.
but no, my
Are you
mom used to have the big girls, and they would get dressed and dolled up, and they would
Mhm.
go on and push their titties together and go down to the big girl events down in Southern California. I don't know where they were, but I do know my mom went to them.
I mean,
Yes.
if I had to guess, I would say that's probably was the Butterfly Lounge, because the Butterfly Lounge
Had
in
to
the
be.
LA area was one of the longest running plus size parties, in anywhere in the world for a long
Mhm.
time. And there's a lot of, there's plus size parties all over the world, especially in the United States. Sometimes they are also very racially segregated. There's,
Yeah.
sort of black centric plus size parties, and which people usually refer to as big girl parties, and
Uh-huh.
then white centric plus size parties, which people usually refer to as BBW events. Sometimes that language crosses over. But for
Right.
me in the Bay, I was trying to do, a party that was focused on fat women of color being the primary event, because I was going to the other parties. I was like a late bloomer to nightlife, and I started going out to mainstream clubs and to plus size clubs. And I would go to the other parties, and I would sometimes get a warm-ish welcome. I
Mhm.
was but I never but there was always something that was like, these parties are more welcoming to black cisgender men than they are to black women and to black
That's
queer
what I
people.
figured. Yeah, that's
And
what I
and
picked up.
and there's again, a lot of nuance to that and more we could talk about there, but it was part of why I started my club, is because I wanted a place for my girls who I was going out with to feel like they were the star of the show, not the
Yeah.
side, not the side quest. This is the actual adventure. It's coming to see
Mhm.
these sisters right here. And so I put together a team of models, because I wanted to put people on the flyers who actually came to the events, not just like stock photography or plus size models that don't think about these clubs at all.
Right.
I wanted
Right.
to
Right.
be
Right. Right.
actually like, this is who actually comes. And out of those women that modeled for me, some of y'all might know Saucy West. She started modeling her modeling career modeling for my club, and we really grew up together as activists in a lot of ways, because part of the goal was throw the hot party on Friday night, but also what else are we doing in the community on the rest of the time? So sometimes that
Mhm.
looked like modeling in the local fashion shows. Sometimes that looked like putting together a team for the AIDS walk. Sometimes that looked like just, what are we posting about online, or how are we trying to make sure our party is inclusive for queer folks, even though we know most of the people who come are straight, but they should be able to bring their queer friends with them and have a good time. Like,
Right.
and how do
Right.
and for a while we did our parties at Asia SF in San Francisco, which is a transgender cabaret. So
I
there
was
was
like,
always
yes, Aisha,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
yeah, and I worked there for a couple years as the reservationist too, and but I knew them because we had a party scheduled at a venue that closed at the last minute without telling us that they had any anything like that was about to happen, and my DJ at the time, Sake One, was like, well, I know these folks at Asia SF, we can move the party over there, and so we did, and so we had our party in the basement club at Asia SF off and on for years. We really were based in Oakland, but we did this San Francisco party. And
Real.
whenever we did the San Francisco party, we had to grapple with, will these cisgender men who want to come dance with our fat girls come to this party? Or will their transphobia prevent them from coming to this party because we are in a place where these transgender women are performing at the cabaret upstairs? you
Mm.
know and so, like, we had to think about intersectionality, even though, like, it's a nightclub event, right? It's not,
Right.
it's not the gay pride march or whatever, but like, but I care about, this is my community. You
Safety.
know
It's a
I,
conversation on safety too.
it's a conversation on
Mhm.
safety. And also, like, I'm straight and I'm super queer adjacent, and what that means is, if I love the queer folks in my life, then I have to go to places and create places that are safe and comfortable and welcoming for
For
them,
everybody. Yep.
right? And they don't have
Mhm.
a queer fat club in the Bay at this time,
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
Bay's timeline either. So if they want to be in a fat positive place,
Yeah.
they're coming to us,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
even if we started the event with the idea that, like, this is a place where cis straight men and women meet, shake their ass on each other and meet each other for dating and whatever else they're doing, even if we started with that idea, if we want to be in solidarity with everybody, and if we want the people we love ourselves to be safe and comfortable here, then we
Yeah.
have to be thinking about those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it became my party was a little bit different than the other plus size parties in the country, because of where we were and because of who I was. I was a DEI director by
Yeah.
day, talking to my students
And
all the
throwing
time.
ass at night. How you
Don't ask
doing?
at night.
Yes.
I'm gonna put on
Can I
these
ask
toe
you a
heels
question?
and
Yeah,
yeah.
can I ask you a question to that? So, I
Hmm.
think this feeds into the question we're gonna ask before we wrap up this
Okay.
segment. I think, you've talked a lot about this idea of just so the kind of this what I'm hearing, or the undertone that I'm getting, is disrupting.
Mhm.
You're taking and you're moving, even with this party, that you're mentioning, right? You're going
Mhm.
into spaces and you're disrupting norms. And I think a lot of folks, especially folks in fat liberation movements, or in any movement for that matter, we get nervous or we get scared around disrupting different spaces, or even
Mhm.
disrupting kind of the status quo. And so I did want to ask you, for someone who's listened to all of this, right, where we've been together
Mhm.
for a minute, and we've heard how you've come into organizations and you've kind of disrupted the status quo. You've gone into clubs, you've disrupted the status quo. I would love to understand, or would love for you to just kind of give us a nugget on, as you're helping to build out this world for fat folks, and you're pushing back and you're resisting, how do you experience people's ideologies, and really communicate in a way that allows them to not misunderstand you, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people are committed to understanding anything about fat
T.
politics and fat liberation,
Facts.
Yeah,
especially.
because they just don't
I
want to see fat
they
people.
don't
Got you.
they
Yeah.
just you just don't
Hmm.
like fat people. Just say you don't like people and move. Just
And
just
move
say
and
it.
go
Just think
home,
you think fat
please.
people are ugly and move on. Get out
Yes,
the
just
way
say
of the
you hate
people
us
who
and
don't
go
feel like
on.
that, right? But yes,
Right.
for the
Hmm.
people in the, we used to say the movable middle, right? Like the folks who actually can grow and learn or change their perspective. Some of it is just like you have to tell, you have to tell the personal stories, you have to share the vulnerable parts. You have to give people space to grow. If
Hmm.
every time something, 'cause one of the things we work really hard at in fat liberation spaces is not is to be very conscious of how, if ever, we use what we call the O words, right? That's overweight and obese, because those are
Mm.
medicalized words, and a lot of people are well intentioned when they use those words, because they just think, well, like, that's what the doctors say, so that's the thing, that's the
Right.
way that's the official thing, that's the thing, that's not
Right.
a
Right. Right. Right.
euphemism.
Right.
But
Mm.
for many fat people, and especially fat people in activist spaces, those words are considered slurred. They're considered slurs,
Hmm.
and they are considered, to be the terminology of an oppressive system, because of the way obesity has been constructed as a disease.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and it, again, way more complicated than we can get into right now. But I just encourage people to sort of question the paradigm of whether there really is an obesity epidemic, even if there are more fat people than there used to be, which is arguable. But even if you believe that, is that a medical epidemic or not, or is that just a shift in bodies as humans change? And like, where,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
question that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, but that's the thing, is like, so if somebody who is well meaning and wants to support us as fat people says obesity, and then you just cancel them because they said obesity, right? Then
Yeah.
they can't learn, right? So
Mm. Mm.
when you think back to like what I was saying earlier about like Ajoma's piece around having like a welcoming committee,
Yeah.
I have the tolerance most of the time to be in the welcoming committee role, so that people who don't want to do that do not have to. I have
Mm.
a higher
Hmm.
tolerance,
Hmm.
and maybe it comes from having been a teacher for years. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be patient with 14-year-olds in a different way than you should have to be patient with 40-year-olds. But
Real.
also,
A
we're all
lot of them
still
are still
learning,
14-year-olds. Yep. In
and
their
we're
mind,
still,
they're still
and
14-year-olds.
that's right. Or they can be brilliant and beautifully liberatory in all these other ways, and they've just never been
Mm.
exposed to some of these dialogues before,
Mm.
Yep.
right? And so that there's space to, like, I have patience, or I have ways of remaining diplomatic in helping them, and then taking my impatient feelings to my friends instead of taking them out on them, right?
Mm.
So that is one of the skill sets that I bring to this work. And a practice with being able to talk to people from lots of different kinds of backgrounds and lots of different kinds of identities and lots of different belief systems, right? I grew up, a first generation to college, broke ass black kid in a white
Same.
school system that was dominated by Mormon ideology and conservative evangelical Christian ideology. And like, I had to survive that without a lot of social and sociocultural support. That taught me how to move and how to code switch in ways that can make it easier for me to help nurture people along this journey. Some people would say that I'm a little too tolerant of people sometimes, and I understand that critique. I think the other thing is, your listeners are not seeing me I'm a light-skinned Black woman. I'm a mixed race Black woman. I had educational
They'll see
access.
you. They'll see you. It'll be on YouTube as well
They'll
too.
see
So
you,
don't you
yeah,
worry.
'cause
They'll see you, girl.
yeah.
I always just listen to y'all on the listening app, so I forget
That's
that I
okay.
already know what you
Yeah.
look like. But like for
And you
people who
look
don't know
good.
what I look like, and when I came into this work, I was a smaller fat person and an able-bodied fat person. I'm neither of those things now, but I'm still
Right.
light-skinned and I still have a certain kind of education. Like I have cultural capital that and
Mm.
privilege that other people don't have, and I
Real.
need to
Real.
be using it. I need to be using it for the benefit of
Mm.
people who don't have, like, so on a spectrum of oppression, I can tick all these boxes of, like, I
Yep.
experience racism, I experience anti-fatness, I experience ableism, I've experienced economic hardship, whatever. And also, even where I am on that spectrum, I'm tremendously more privileged than a lot of other people. And
Yep.
so that I have to acknowledge that, and I have to use that wherever I can,
Yeah.
and model for other people to use that. And so for me, the question being, like, how do you grapple with people who have all these other ideologies? I've had a lot of I'm 50 years old. I've had a lot of practice moving through lots of different kinds of groups of people and trying to help them learn
Mm.
about things that they didn't already know about or that were sensitive to learn about or whatever, and holding a little space for them to make mistakes, and and knowing when to check people a little harder and when not
Mm.
to. Like, I have that skill set. And also I just have a really great support network and a twisted sense of humor. So sometimes when these fools come at me with just like pure nonsense, when it's just
That's
like
me.
the
Yeah, I'm a
troll
crack a
level
joke. Yep.
nonsense, the
I'ma just
troll
joke.
level,
It's just a joke.
that's your best shot. That's
Yeah.
your best shot. To
Yeah.
be really centered in, like, because I don't want any of your listeners to think that I have it all worked out, that I am, perfectly body positive every moment of my life. My body is changing as I age, as I've moved in and out of different, phases of disability. Like, there's
Yeah.
all this stuff that I've had to learn to adjust to. I've had to deal with my internalized anti-fatness, my internalized ableism, my internalized ageism, and it's
Mhm.
not perfect. I don't always look at myself in the mirror and think the things that I want to think about myself in the mirror.
Mm.
But what I
Right.
always know is, no matter how much I think I'm ugly today, or I think I'm fat today, or whatever, I still deserve to be treated fairly.
Real.
I'm
Real.
centered in that. I'm unwavering in that. And I'm
Mhm.
Mhm.
unwavering in it for the rest of you as well. I don't
Yeah.
care how ugly people think you are. I don't care how much people think you're unhealthy. I don't care what people have to say to you, to say about your appearance or your health or any of the
Yep.
things that they
Put some
attack us on
respect
all the
on it.
time. I don't,
Mhm.
yeah, they can think whatever they want to about all the things they attack us on at any moment. And we still deserve equity, justice, liberation, freedom. Like, we still deserve all of those things, access, a sense of welcome. We still deserve all those things, and we're going to get it wherever we can. And we were talking earlier about Jordan, when you were talking, Joho, about the theater seats, right?
Mhm.
There are a lot of theaters that are completely inaccessible.
Mhm.
And there are also many, many theaters that have accessibility procedures. Like, they can pull out a couple of these chairs and put a bench in, or
Mhm.
the arms come off the side of this chair, and we won't ask for it because we're too ashamed to ask for it. I don't want anybody to see that I'm so fat I have to take the arm off the chair to. Then, girl, you don't want to go to the theater, because
Okay.
this is what exists right now.
No,
Right.
This is,
Like,
I mean, like,
bitch, yes.
because I'll
we
ask any place. Do you have an arm without? Do you have a chair without arms, girl?
you
Yes,
have
because
to
I'm
No,
ask
not
for
about
it,
to squeeze myself
I'm
into
not
this
doing
chair.
this.
And, like, no shade to people who get on the plane and bring their own seatbelt extender so they don't have to ask for
I
one.
got mine in my
But
bag.
you good, do what works for you. But I have no shame about asking for a seatbelt extender.
Hello?
Mhm,
Oh, I will
mhm.
I'm
look
like,
around
I'll
real
get
quick.
them.
Excuse
Y'all
me?
have a
Do you
karaoke
have
Excuse
night?
one?
Because
me?
I will. Yeah.
Okay, but also, can we talk about how when you ask for it, they like discreetly give it in, like, here you go, girl.
Yeah,
You ain't
they
got
hand
to
it to
hide
you
it,
like it's
man.
the
You
Underground
just
Railroad.
And
Here you go.
stop
Bitch, you can
it.
just hand me the thing. You ain't got
Underground
to give it
Railroad.
to me like
You
Harriet Tubman.
crazy bitch. You
they
Underground Railroad.
but that's the thing, is, like, everybody's on a different place in the journey. So again, no shade for you.
I
If
feel
you
it.
feel
I
a
feel
sense of
it.
relief because the flight attendant gave it to you discreetly, I just want you to have your seatbelt. But that's the thing. I want you to have your seat and your seatbelt. And it's not,
Yeah.
the plane's one
Seats
example,
and
but it's
seatbelt. Yes.
all if the plane is one example, but it's in all the places. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable advocating for yourself when other people won't
Real.
advocate for you, because
Okay.
the theaters should be trying to change. Using that example, the theaters should be trying to change, but until they do, you don't have to stay in your house and never see a play again.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
you
You
put
have every
your
right.
outfit on, you put your mask on, and you go down to the theater and you tell them that you need a bigger seat. You call ahead and
Amen.
find out what they have. And all of that, like sometimes I do that even if I'm not feeling myself. If I'm
Yeah.
looking in the mirror and I'm feeling like this is today, it is not it today,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
then I'm still, what helps me is knowing that whenever I do it out in the real world, whether that's asking for a different seat, asking for the seatbelt extender, get telling somebody we can't go to this restaurant because it's too tight, we can't I don't there's nothing for me at this store, will you come with me to this other store, like whatever the thing is, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
advocating for it for myself, I'm also advocating for it for other people. And so
Yeah.
sometimes on those like lower self-esteem days where I'm not feeling my own worth in the way that I should because I'm glorious,
Yeah.
where I'm a little more sensitive to if somebody says something crazy to me out here in this world, or whatever. On those days, putting on that sort of like, it's like putting on I'm not trying to be like, I'm Captain Save a Fat, but like,
Yeah.
but putting on the cape to know that when you advocate for yourself, it actually is helping other people too. Sometimes that's the thing that gets me over on a day when I wouldn't have advocated for myself only,
Yeah.
Mm.
and I have
This
that
is
official,
yeah.
like,
No,
I have
and
that,
this is you
sorry.
say that again?
I have that official hat to put on because I am literally the president of fat people in a way, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
I
you have
literally
to
have
wear that hat.
that
Yes.
hat,
Yeah.
right? But when I'm out in the world at home, people don't know. It's not like I have a sign on that says this is the president of the fat organization. I'm just the fat lady, right?
I'm just a very well educated fat lady. Yes.
I'm just the fat lady. And when I go to my own doctor's office, or like I had to fight with these women. I went to have a mammogram, and I got in a pretty heated debate with the women in the front office because they only had they didn't have larger size gowns in a full length
Never
gown. They
do.
only had them in the little half gowns that you just take off
Uh-huh.
your top. But I had, if I come in here, oh, sorry, I said that backwards. They had them in the little half gowns, but they didn't have them in full length gowns. So if I have a half gown,
Your booty
and
out.
thank you. I need
Yeah,
a
I
full
don't want
length.
my
I
booty
need a full
out.
length gown. I need a full length gown that fits me, and there are people bigger than me who come in here.
Yes.
Why don't you have this for us? And I got emotional. I wasn't in my NAFA mindset. I was in my mindset of, lady, this is my first mammogram since my best friend died of breast cancer. I don't want to be in here arguing with you.
Right.
And nobody should be in arguing with you about something sensitive like this. I don't care if your distributor doesn't have a 5X gown. Amazon has one. And I'm not going to advocate for you to get anything off Amazon except
Right.
that.
Right.
Except that.
Okay.
Get it.
Right.
Order
Do
it
what you gotta
today.
do to
Have it
get it
here
done.
by tomorrow for the next
I need
Tomorrow.
the
month.
link,
Amen.
But
girl.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wasn't, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I do, like, because I think it's easier for people to hear me talking about it and be like, well, that's easy for you because you're the chair of NAFA. You fall back on, you give them your business card and tell them a thing. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes I'm just like y'all. I'm just the fat lady in the thing having to do the thing.
You're human.
Um,
You're human.
and you,
And can I say something real quick to that
mm-hmm,
point? I think
mm-hmm,
so. You're mentioning something that I think is very important. I think sometimes I had mentioned this to somebody. I think it was actually shout out to our listener, Kyle and Jared, who listen to our show weekly. And I was with them just recently. We were talking about activism as a whole, and I was explaining to them that I think sometimes people forget that folks like us, right? Folks who are on a podcast, on a network, or folks who are presidents of an organization, or folks who are wearing this activisty hat, are human. And I
mm-hmm,
think for me, I think this is the thing that I really want us to not lose in this conversation of like, you've dropped so many amazing gems, and you've really got folks to really thinking about how do we do the work. But I also want to encourage people in this time and in this moment, especially folks who are out here who literally are on the ground, who literally have their boots and their fans on the ground, right? To not get lost in the humanity of this all, the emotion that you're feeling. I know it's easy for us to say, well, I can't be emotional. I got to get out there and I got to fight. Yes. we are all fighting different battles, whether it's a fat battle, whether it's an immigration battle, whether it's a black queer battle, whether it's, I work for an organization, and an email just came out that one of the service providers that we have for queer youth in my organization has closed its door. And so now we're trying to figure out excuse my language, what the fuck we're going to do to help these queer babies as they maintain their mental health and get access to trans care and all these things, right? All of us, like, even in these moments when I'm trying to think strategically about all of the stuff that I have to do, there's this innate feeling that I'm having in my stomach, and I'm going, baby, don't forget that you're human too. And I want us to hear that. Like, I want us to I wanted to say it on the mic, but I want us to hear it, because I think so many of us look at folks like yourself as superhuman, and we look at people who are doing these movements and who are leading these movements as superhumans, and we are not. We are all having a very emotional, very humanistic experience, and I want to make sure that we don't lose this. So I'm going to say this. We're going to go to break real quick, and then we're going to go to our next. We're going to do a little bit of some. We don't. What is it, Missy? Remix. We're going to do a little bit of a remix, but it's going to tie into a lot of what we've already been talking about, and then we're going to go out and go ahead and close the show. So we've affirmed our big girls. We love us. We love us for real, but also take a moment, drink something, do something you got to do to take care of yourself. And then when we get back, we're going to get back with our yes ma'am and our no ma'am segment. Okay. All right, y'all. So this week we're going to remix our yes ma'am and our no ma'am segment. So we initially in our notes have put something in here for Tigress to talk to us about fatness and pop culture and all of the things that we actually enjoy or things that we hate. So we're going to do a spin on that. We're going to do a yes ma'am to the things that we think are really cool as fat people, and we're going to do a no ma'am to all the things that we hate. So I'm gonna start with you, Joe.
Okay, remix.
Yes, you see what I did there. I'm gonna stay on brand.
That's the vision.
Yes, we're gonna stay on brand. But we're gonna do a little bit of a remix, because we got us a very, very talented, educated, brilliant person with us, and I was like, I would love to know in their mind what's actually happening here. So we'll start with Joho. We'll go to you, Tigress, and then I'll close out. Okay. What is something that you as a fat person you're loving right now? What is something that you see that you're like, oh, this is what's up?
Okay, so yes, ma'am. Fat jokes told by fat people.
Amen. Okay.
No, ma'am. Fat jokes told by my size people. No, ma'am. Fat suits, but yes, ma'am. If it's Big Mama's house, and dare I say yes, ma'am. Yes,
Lord.
ma'am. If it's
Lord.
Medea, circa 2000 to 2010.
I hate you. No.
Yes, 2010.
Canceled.
Okay. An absolute no, ma'am. Kidding. I am tired of weight storylines. I can't stand them. I don't need a girl to get a pep talk about how to lose weight, and I don't need a girl to have a pep talk about how she needs to be confident either. I want to see a yes, ma'am to a character who inherently just loves her body. Regardless, no one comments on it. Like no one's like, oh, she's so brave. This bitch is just out here being a regular person. Yes, to that. But do not give me a whole storyline where she has to have a pep talk and be like, oh, I can be confident. Girl, you are confident.
Yeah. Live your life, bitch.
Live your life, bitch, or else no one's gonna live it for you, girl. Live your life.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen. So Tigress, yes ma'ams to fatness, no ma'ams to fatness.
Okay, the yes ma'am that came to mind for me first is that I've been totally binging Tiny Desk concerts because it's Black Music Month, and they're doing some incredible new ones. But I actually, when I first started watching Tiny Desk, I actually thought it was specifically a Black music show, because whatever I started with,
Black artists.
it only was recommending other Black artists.
Same.
I mean, it was so long before I realized there were other people on Tiny Desk. But and I've seen lots of other great Tiny Desks, but really that vein of Black artists and the way that bigger bodied folks of all genders are, in those clips looking fly as hell when they are the backup singers, when they are the band, when they're like, it's not a bunch of fat artists as the main artist, because it's Maxwell, it's Usher, it's whoever, but looking at, although I love Tank and the Bangers Tiny Desk. If you've never seen it, it's incredible. Yet also, but bigger bodied people, right? Getting to see bigger bodied people through that particular show is really turning me on lately. So that's what came to mind as like a big fat yes ma'am, because it's like a bunch of little yes ma'ams, because it's a bunch of different episodes, right? What's a no ma'am? Um, I mean, I really want people to stop asking the question, has Ozempic killed body positivity? There's a whole wave of media and it keeps like recycling. Like every time I think it's gone away, then there's a new one that's like, did Ozempic kill body positivity? Or like is fat activism over because of Ozempic? And Ozempic et al., right? All of those drugs. And listen, one of the key principles of fat liberation to me is body autonomy.
Right.
People's choice whether or not to access these medications, even if they're accessing them specifically for weight loss, that is their choice.
Right.
But the way we talk about it collectively, and the way the media talks about it, and the way that it is pumping up narratives about the fact that fat can be solved and should be solved.
Right.
This is just a big fat no ma'am to all of that, right?
Yeah.
I like want to have subtle nuanced dialogues around weight loss and the weight loss industrial complex and all of that stuff, but just as a sort of like super shortcut of just being like, no one has to be fat anymore because of Ozempic. Like that sucks and it's untrue.
Right. And it's
a big fat no ma'am.
And if I can, you know what? So I have not said this on the air, but I've been talking about it. I also would love, so kind of to your point, you know, I'm going to get into my yes ma'am, my no ma'am in a second, because they're kind of one and the same. But I was going to say, you know, I haven't vocally said on the mic that I am now on Ozempic, and it came at a time when I was very like hesitant, like I didn't want to get on it. And then my doctor was like, the metformin that you're taking is not doing what it needs to do. We can't figure out, you know, there's no other alternative other than you getting on it. So I was like, okay, fine. I will be very upfront. I have lost some weight, but I will be very transparent in saying that the weight loss, like I wish people were actually talking more about this notion of, it's not just the idea of like, oh, the side effects. How fucked up it is to be on it. Like if my doctor was to tell me tomorrow, you don't have to jab yourself anymore, you can get off the Ozempic, I would get off of it, because it has changed everything in my life. It has changed the relationship I have with food. It has changed. I go through these weird waves of being starving and then wanting to go eat. And then when I go to eat, I am grossed out. And so now I'm frustrated because I really wish I could enjoy a meal the way I enjoy a meal. I'm a big bitch who likes to eat. And I don't say that. No, I'm just being real. Like Ozempic has really fucked up my life in a lot of ways. And I wish more people, instead of glorifying it for just this weight loss thing, I really wish people were talking about, you know, what the trueness of it all is Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever. And me and my friends were in a group together. You know, I'm on anti-nausea medication now. I'm on one more medication I didn't want to be on. You know, there are all of these things, and I think we can come back to this in another life. But I'm just saying, like, I agree with you. Like, yes, I'm sick of hearing this conversation, but I also believe like we really need to start having real conversations about what this medicine is really doing to people, and how there are so many of us. I have friends that are texting me and we're having conversations back and forth about what we're doing to just enjoy eating, because we're hungry and we're sick every time we eat, you know?
And it's, you know, and it has that effect for some people and not for others. Like, this is the whole reason why we need to be, it's not a no ma'am to any conversation about these drugs.
Right.
It's a no ma'am to oversimplified conversation.
That's it.
Narratives that only present one side of the story, you know, and the only side of the story they're presenting is, you know, we're going to save the world from fatness because individuals are going to get thinner, and the whole, like at the beginning, there were these ridiculous ass articles that were like, we're going to save the airline industry because so many people are going to lose weight, that, you know, that jet fuel is going to be cheaper, or like, you know, we're going to like fast food is going to go out of business because like they're just ridiculous conversations. And some of that stuff is, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist again, but like some of that stuff is actually planted by the drug companies in the media.
Yes.
There's that
Big pharma
too.
is something.
But like, and you know, always you know, like, and it's always a complicated yes ma'am no ma'am to pharmaceuticals, because they save so many people's lives in so many ways. And also we are dependent on these companies that are absolutely shady in, like,
Mhm.
I want some of these companies are the same people that are making, breakthroughs in Alzheimer's, breakthroughs in cancer. I don't
Yeah.
want the companies to just collapse, but
Mhm.
Right.
I definitely want to dream a new world that works a different way
Can
around
we
that
stop?
too.
Mm.
Yeah, can we
So
stop?
like,
You're real.
Dream bigger,
That's
bitch.
so real. Can we dream
Mm.
bigger, bitch? Can we have
Mhm.
real conversations on, is there a way for us to not, and I think that's the thing. For me, it's like, can we talk about it really about how, like, I would love for people to be talking about how has Ozempic made my life easier as someone living with type 2 diabetes. Let's dive into that more
mhm.
than this idea of weight loss. And I hate
Mhm.
that the
you
idea of,
can't you
huh?
can't you can't sell the drug as effectively with that conversation as you
I
can
know you
sell it
can't,
with the
and
weight
I
loss
know you can't. But what
conversation.
I'm
And
saying
that's what it
is,
comes down to,
yeah, it's
you
it's
know.
it's all capitalism. It's all capitalism, and I think that's actually going to be part of my yes, ma'am, is to the people who are pushing back, like you and a lot of other people are pushing back to these conversations on just in the the medical field. We're pushing back on how we have these discussions. So I love that, and I love that we're becoming more real about this and people giving people grace to talk about these things. My no, ma'am. So, I want to make sure that I say this, so it doesn't come across as insensitive. I first want to allude that I'm actually going to be talking about death, and so trigger warning for anybody who may be triggered by this. You can, I will make sure to put a marker in this segment so that way if you want to skip it, you can. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Ananda Lewis, specifically, and
Mm,
thinking about, I want to say my heart goes out to her family and friends. I just recently became, I'm gonna say, I met Dave Holmes, and we follow each other now on social, and we talk back and forth a lot. And seeing how Ananda's death impacted Dave Holmes. For those of you who don't know Dave Holmes, he was a really big VJ for MTV back in the early heydays.
mhm,
It's sad. It really
mhm.
hurt me to see someone that I'm becoming friends with really lose someone that they were super close to in this way. And so my no ma'am in this conversation is, I really want to say I'm really sick and tired of the health influencers and this whole entire um this quote unquote health movement per se. um it in my opinion is what killed Ananda Lewis. um she was very, I should say, she was very vocal about taking all of this information, right, and running with it, and saying like, oh, I can healthy my way out of breast cancer. And by the time that she got to a place where it was too late, she realized, maybe I should have listened to my doctor, maybe I should have listened to people around me about what I should be doing. And so for me, my no ma'am has been that, like, there are so many health influencers and so many of these health people who are saying, oh, do this and do that and don't do this and don't do that. If it is not coming from a doctor you trust, not even just a doctor, I want to make that very clear. A doctor you trust, because I just changed. We just had a conversation and we just had an episode about that. I changed my whole doctor because I felt like my doctor wasn't trusting me and was not working in my best right judgment. So I switched it up on her ass. I want you to have a good relationship with your doctor, but I'm also saying trust your doctors. If your doctors are saying, I think this is good for you, and you have that relationship where you feel like you can trust them, listen to them. Um,
It's
Go
so
ahead.
hard because it's so hard because we live in a system where a lot of folks don't have choice about who their doctor can be.
Right,
This is
right,
who takes my insurance. This is who has office hours at a time when I won't lose my job for going to the
right,
doctor.
right.
This is like there's all of these other
I know it's
influences.
nuanced.
It's
I know it's nuanced.
so hard for
Mm-hmm.
folks to find good healthcare. But I want to mention two fat specific healthcare resources. I mean, I want folks to know if the we have some healthcare self-advocacy toolkits that we've been working on updating,
Good.
and they'll be back on our website in time for Fat Liberation Month in August.
Hey.
And so that is a great, you can check out the resources that we have. In the meantime, I want to say that for folks who are in larger bodies who may need imaging or like an MRI or a CAT scan or something like that, the FLAIR, the Fat Legal Advocacy Organization, has just put a database up on their website. If you know a place that has a larger accommodating MRI,
Yeah.
or if you'd like to volunteer to help them call places to check that, you can see all that on their website, which is flairproject.org /imaging. And I also want to give a shout out to the new organization. Hopefully some of your listeners already know about ASDA, which is the Association for Size Diversity and Health. And
Yes.
there's a lot of folks, a lot of nutritionists, dietitians. So some of the things, Dr. John, that you're talking about the intersections of fatness and eating disorder, there are a lot of folks in that organization who are, really thinking about those kinds of things from a weight inclusive perspective. But also there's another new organization called AWESOME, the Association for Size and Weight Inclusive Medicine. And it is an association of doctors. So the ASDA folks are healthcare practitioners, but they're mostly not doctors. Now there's an organization for doctors to join and learn more about being inclusive in their healthcare practice. So refer your own doctor to that. Look at the materials they have for doctors to get some training. And, it takes more time. It's, one of the things that's always unfair in our marginalized identities is that we have to spend more time and do more work to advocate for ourselves. But at least I want y'all to know some of those tools are out there to help you with advocating for yourself.
Thank you for that so much.
And we're gonna definitely put that in our show notes for folks. I will do my best during our listen back to try to capture all of that and put it in ours. But I was also gonna say, just kind of my last point, just be cautious about who you're taking health advice from, especially if they are quote unquote influencers. That is literally what my point is, because so much of us are taking advice from people who don't know what the hell they're talking about, and then turning around juicing up to I'm yoked, I'm really healthy. Nah, girl, you're taking steroids. And not to shame people who do. I'm just saying that we got to be cautious about where we get our information in terms of our health. With that being said, I know this episode, my God, this episode was so massive in a way that we had clocked that. We have never had anyone on this show talk about cultural capital in the way that you have. So thank you for that. Like Tigress, like I am honored to just know that you exist and to know that the work that you're doing is important. Folks, if there's any questions or anything that you feel like was, a really big concept, or you felt like there was a concept that you would love for us to dive more into around this conversation of whether it be marching, liberation, whether it be activism, whatever the case may be, please send your thoughts, your feedback, and your email to blackfatfempod@gmail.com. I promise you either me or Joho will respond. We want to make sure that folks are we're not just talking at you, but we're talking with you. And we want to make sure that you're included in the conversation. You can also send your thoughts over to us over on Instagram and Blue Sky by using, and also Threads. We're also on Threads. So if you want to send us a thread message as well, you can. Black Fat Femme Pod is where you can find us. With that being said, Tigress, can you let us know where the dolls can find you?
They can find me on I'm most active on Instagram, and it's Eye of the Tigress, like the letter I of the Tigress.
I love that.
And NAFA is also most active on Instagram. We have hope to branch out to more platforms, but we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, and I think coming soon to Threads. And our website is nafa.org, NAAFA.org. I am always behind on email, but you are welcome to reach out through our contact form on our website if you have something specific for me, and our fabulous assistant Julianne will help make sure that you actually get an answer from me. And I just want to thank y'all for having me on the show. I want your listeners to know that we do a bunch of virtual programming during August for Fat Liberation Month. So it's a great time to start following us, start learning more about this movement. There are so many other folks that you can learn from in this movement, and we'll be featuring some of them during Fat Liberation Month. So it's a great time to get to know us and learn more about NAFA as an organization, but just fat rights work in general.
Amen. I love that. And again, thank you so much for taking this time out. For those of you who do or don't know, we're actually recording on a weekend because everyone's schedule has been up in flux. And so just for you to take time out of the weekend to be able to share your mind and your thoughts and to uplift the work that you're doing, it really means a lot to both me and Joho. And I just really wanted to say that. Queen Joho, where can the dolls find you before you go out there in March?
Thank you, girl. Of course, y'all can find me at Joho Downs across all socials. My website, JordanDowns.com. You can find me schwitzing in the streets when I go on my protest this week. You also, if not, you can find me on the corner doing my one-man stand-up show. The funny fat bitch.
I know that's right. Girl, you better put a TM behind that before somebody try to steal it. Yes, the funny fat bitch. I know that's right. And I too very much can attest that Joho is one of the most funniest and comedic people that I know. And I'm so grateful to have them as my co-host on the show. With that being said, as for me and mine, you can find me down to the www.drjonpaul.com. I only have 4 more book stops. For those of you, I will be in Dallas. I will be in New Orleans. I will be in I can see the name of the place, but I can't think of it. But anyway, and then I'm in Minneapolis. There's another one on there. So if you want to go to my website, you want to find out where I am, though you will see the stops. Keep buying the book, keep running it up. Listen to the podcast. There's a few other spots when they come out and their drops. I will let you know. I will also say that I am promoting the book on a very, very, very funny podcast. So keep your eye out for that. I will mention it once it drops on the show. And then other than that, you can find me somewhere crying because I can't eat a donut. I've been craving a donut the way I've been wanting one so deeply. And it's not that I can't have it. It's just I know that if I do eat it, that there's going to be a lot of things I cannot have because I got to keep my sugar together. So I don't even want to chance it. And it bugs me to know that that's where I am in my life, where I'm like, do I want the soda or do I want the donut? And I want the soda more.
There might be I'm sending you vibes for a donut comeback, or for you to find like the perfect donut that works with your blood
a
sugar.
donut balance, girl. I want one so bad, but I've been thinking like, girl, do you really want to have to deal with, having to get rid of other stuff so you can have that one donut because the sugar pushes my numbers up so high. So I just want to send me a prayer, send me something, girl, or else you can send me a labubu. If you really feel bad for me, you can send me a labubu. That'll make me feel so much better. If you don't know what a labubu is, look it up. You're missing out. But with that being said, we thank everybody who keeps listening to the show. We want to thank our producer, Bei Wang, for handling all the logistics and making this happen. And we want to also thank iHeartMedia for keeping the show up and running and supporting us. We'd also like to shout out our wonderful editor, Chris Rogers, because without him, we'd have no audio or visuals down at the tubes of you. And yes, I want to shout out everybody who watches the YouTube videos and leaves comments. We see them. We love you for it. We definitely thank you. This has been another show. Stay black, fat, femme, and fabulous. And remember what, Joho?
We may not be your cup of tea, but girl, it's hot in these streets, so drink some water, please.
Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated because you probably need it anyway. I love us for real. And I also want to say this real quick before we go off. I'm gonna hold this too. For anybody who's dealing with folks saying you suck the air out of rooms, keep doing it. You need it. It's your air.
Suffer.
Take all the air out the room. And if they want, suffer. And if they want, and if they feel a way, tell them to get what is it? The little air. What's the air mask thing? What you call them things? The things, the air tanks, the oxygen tank. Tell them to get an oxygen tank so you can take that air too. I love us for real. Bye, y'all.
Bye.